Thank you. Good morning, everybody. We're going to take it down a notch. Introducing Joe McCambley. That was funny to me. Come on. like a lot of you, I speak in front of groups fairly often. And for some reason, the addition of a stage just really stresses me out. And I had originally planned to go down in front of the screen and point at numbers for you until Aaron told me that I'm not allowed to leave the stage because this is being filmed. And my heartbeat just started to race. And I look around this room and I don't see a defibrillator. So if I go down, Aaron, you're up to help me recover. So this has been a great conference, and I was hoping that you could help me say a big thank you to Media Post. So this is being recorded, and those of us who speak, we like to post these videos to LinkedIn to say we spoke at Media Post, and it was a great conference. So I want you to help me thank Media Post for a great conference. If you don't mind standing up for a second, please. Everybody just stand up. Now, I'm going to give a count to 3, and when I hit 3, I'm going to ask you just cheer like your 12-year-old hit a grand slam home run in the Little League World Series. And we're going to hold that for about 10 seconds. And when you see me kind of go like this, then just don't die down right away, but let it die down gradually, okay? Please, this is going to be amazing. So, ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh my God. No matter how many times this happens to me, it's still very emotional. Thank you. Thank you. Please take your seats. Oh my God. Is my mascara running? Well, thank you for having me here today. I have a clicker. I'm Joe McCambley. I'm the CMO at Saatva, and we're a luxury mattress brand. We were one of the first brands to sell mattresses online in 2010. At the time, there were mattress brands you've heard of: Tempur-Pedic, Sleep Number, Mattress Firm was a big retailer. But in 2010, they weren't really paying attention to e-commerce. So when we first sold our first mattress via email in 2010, we moved into paid search. We were really the only game on the top of the search engine result page. Yeah, Tempur-Pedic was there and other brands were there, but they weren't really focused on e-commerce the way we had become focused on e-commerce. So we kind of grew unfettered until around 2017. That's when I joined Saatva. We were only in non-branded search at the time that I joined the company. So non-branded search is somebody goes to Google, they search for mattress, best mattress in Phoenix, and hopefully they see your ad and they click on you. I think you all know that. So between 2014 and 2017, though, there were about 200 to 250 brands, mattress startups that came online. And you've heard of them: Casper, Purple, Lisa, Nectar, Tuft & Needle, bunches of them. And they made a different product from ours. Ours is an innerspring mattress. We deliver to you whole. We take away your old bed. It's a very white glove, luxurious experience. They made beds where they would compress them. They were memory foam beds like a Tempur-Pedic, and then they would fold them and put them into a box, and they would send it to you by FedEx or by UPS. And while it was a very different product, they still called them mattresses. And so our cost per click on the search engine result page went from about $2.80 per click in 2014 to, at some periods in 2017, over $28. So business just became enormously expensive for us. And in 2017 was the first year that we lost money. So at the end of the year, our CFO got up in front of the board of directors, and he had a slide that showed this year-over-year revenue growth happening until about July of 2017 when I joined the company. And then, like a SpaceX rocket plummeting into the sea, our year-over-year revenue started to just crash. And he had a little notation at the peak, and it said, "Joe McCambley joined Saatva." And there's a lot of laughter, but it was kind of nervous laughter, especially for me, because it was the first time people in the room, you could tell they were thinking, yeah, that's right. When he joined, things kind of went into the toilet. So we knew that we were over-dependent on non-branded search. We had to kind of expand into other channels. But we didn't have expertise. We only had a search team that was working in marketing at the time. We didn't have any other channels, really. So we wanted to kind of stick to what we knew, and we expanded into the affiliate business. So affiliates in the mattress business would be, you've probably heard of Wirecutter, for instance, that's owned by the New York Times. So you search for best mattress, and you see an ad for the Wirecutter, you click on it, you go there, and they're rating mattress companies, and then you see Saatva. And we had avoided the affiliate business for years because we didn't want to pay a commission. And we had people coming to our site free, and we weren't paying commissions. The margins were really good. But now we were in a different situation. And the tragedy, what happened to us in non-branded search actually turned out to be a good thing, because by going into the affiliate space, we learned that we could pay an affiliate commission and make a greater profit paying that commission than we could if we tried to compete in the auction on Google against those 250 brands. And we also saw that affiliate brands like the Wirecutter lent social proof to us. So people would go to the Wirecutter, they would see Saatva, because the Wirecutter likes Saatva, they like Saatva, so click-through rates from affiliates were better than click-through rates on our own branded ad, or our own search ads. Conversion rates were much higher. The other benefit for affiliates to us was that we didn't pay for the commission until after the sale had happened. So unlike search, where you're paying up front and hoping for the best, with affiliates, you're only paying after you get the sale. So it was more profitable, it was more effective. It actually helped our brand awareness, which was almost zero at the time. And things started to slowly turn around. If you were to look at a search engine result page in, say, the beginning of 2020, if you did a search for best mattress, it would be almost impossible not to encounter Saatva. Between our shopping ads, between the affiliates are all pointing to us. And then we had also built a blog that today has about 1,400 articles. So we were showing up for free on organic search results. And today the blog generates about $30 million in revenue a year. So we were in a really good position in 2020. And then COVID hit. When COVID hit, brands like Tempur-Pedic, Sleep Number, Mattress Firm, they all had to shut their doors. Consumers had no retail options, so they went online whenever they wanted to buy mattresses. And still by that time, a lot of those traditional brands had not really focused on e-commerce. So our market share just exploded through COVID. It was so good for us. After COVID, we saw that people stopped searching for mattresses. And the problem with performance marketing is, you're kind of dependent on market demand. As people are searching, our business rose. When people stopped searching, it went back into the toilet like it did in 2017. So I went from kind of looking like a genius to looking like a moron again, like I did in 2017. So we knew we were over-dependent on performance, and we had to expand into other channels. And we started to do that. So while this presentation is really about, can YouTube replace TV or be a proxy for TV, I'd like to give you an understanding of what TV has meant to us since the end of COVID and how it kind of transformed our business, because we're not just looking for YouTube to be an impression. We're looking for it to replace very, very highly valuable impressions that have kind of changed our business. So today, we're in about 15 or 16 different channels. We have almost 25 retail stores around the country. We have a pretty healthy phone business as well. So we're in many more marketing channels. We have many more options where consumers can search for us and buy from us. The caveat I want to give is that oftentimes when I read advice on sites like LinkedIn or whatever, everything sounds so simple. You should pay attention to the consumer journey and personalize the experience as much as you possibly can. It's hard. It's almost impossible to do, it seems. What I'm going to oversimplify this story for you, because where we've arrived as a brand is we have a mathematical formula, if you will. This is the equivalent of our E = MC squared, where there are some variables and there's some constants, but we've learned to count on this. So as we understood that we had to move into other channels, we weren't really sure how to do that, because like I said, we had a search team, we had an affiliate team by then. We didn't have a lot of other things that we needed to expand into other channels, especially the experience of the knowledge. So we partnered with an organization called WARC, it's a World Advertising Research Council, And they're pretty popular in Europe. They're affiliated with the Cannes Advertising Festival and the Effie Awards, and they publish a lot of data and information around how brands like ours, performance brands, have moved up the funnel over time. So we worked with WARC to put together a curriculum for our leadership team. And that was really important because for those of you, I know I've met a couple of you here that started out as performance brands and you're trying to move up the funnel. You get resistance every day, every step of the way from a leadership team that only knows search. And the moment you try to go into podcasting or radio, it's like, why are you doing that? Why are you ignoring what got us where we are? So it's kind of a battle. And what I wanted to do is create a curriculum so that our leadership team could understand that this is how it's done. So we partnered with WARC, and the hypothesis we had going into this journey was if we could establish an excess share of voice in the marketplace with impressions, that we would see more people search for our brand online. And if more people search, then we would see our market share would grow. And there are a couple of important facets of this equation for us. Excess share of voice means you only have to have a share of voice that's greater than your market share. At the time, our market share was about 1%. So having 2x our market share in terms of a share of voice was much easier than trying to have a greater share of voice in Tempur-Pedic or Sleep Number or Mattress Firm. They spend billions. We didn't have that money. The second thing is that we weren't looking for brand awareness. We weren't looking for revenue to grow immediately. We were looking for search to move. And the nice thing about that is that search moves much sooner than market share. So you're not waiting 6 months and telling your leadership team, just be patient, it's going to be okay. You're able to say, wow, this is happening. You can, as evidenced by our hypothesis, you should see our share of search growing. When we went into this, because we just wanted an excess share of voice, we didn't care about targeting. We weren't targeting DMAs. We weren't targeting audiences. We were straight linear all the way. Our goal was to put as many impressions in the market as we can for the lowest possible cost. So it turned out our CPMs on linear in this effort for about the first 6 months was under $3, really between $2.60 and $2.80. So with the limited budget we had, we were able to have a pretty decent impression share. I'm having trouble seeing these slides. So I'll skip this. I think you get the idea. So if you look at that downward light brown line at the top of the chart, that's search volume. So since COVID ended, search volume in the mattress space has been going down steadily year over year. Depending on which brand you are, you might see your revenue going down 10 to 15% per year. That dark line below is our revenue. So since COVID, we've been able to grow our revenue despite the fact that the market has been declining. And we did it. What I forgot to mention on that last slide, I apologize, is we kind of dipped our toes in the water. We didn't go right into TV at first. We went into podcasting and radio. We had very limited dollars to spend, probably like $200,000 a month. And within a week, we saw our share of search move. Didn't move hugely, but within a week, I was able to go to the leadership team and say, this seems to be working. Within a month, we saw our revenue start to grow again. After COVID, it had been going down, and it turned around. And over time, we have actually learned that this is a pretty predictable equation. So when you look at our excess share of voice, if we have a share of voice that leads to share of search, the R-squared value there is 0.51. What that means in layman's terms is that 51% of the movement in our share of search can be explained by the number of impressions that we have in the market. So 51% of our growing revenue could be explained by impression share, and this includes TV now. I meant to move this slide, sorry. 49% of our movement in share of search is to everything else we're doing in marketing. So when you look at things like radio, podcasting, TV impressions, this is pretty important to us. Even more importantly, 63% of our market share movement could be explained by movement in our share of search. So based on those early results, those R-squared values were lower for podcasting and radio. We dipped our toe in linear TV about a year later. And then about 6 months after that, we went into streaming TV because the data said that we should. And that what this chart is meant to show is from 2021 or so, when we see the radio and podcasting impressions, that light gray area, then we went into TV. You can see that our share search, especially when we went into TV, skyrocketed, and our market share had a very similar movement. And that's been our story since about 2022. The more TV impressions we put into market, the better our business is. So after about 10 billion impressions over a 2 to 3 year period, we learned that the more impressions we put into market, the more people search for us, and then the more people buy from us. So our business had become very, very predictable. So much so that going into the holiday weekend and Thanksgiving, that Cyber 5 weekend, we went to the board and said, you're asking us to do this revenue number. We think we could do this much, but we have to invest in impressions. So to that end, we put more impressions in market than we ever had in the history of the company. And for the Cyber 5 weekend, we had the best momentum going into a holiday in terms of year-over-year revenue growth before a tentpole holiday than ever. So in this chart, that orange line is year-over-year revenue gains going into the Labor Day holiday, which was in September. We were orders of magnitude above that, even going into Cyber 5 just a couple of months later. So we were seeing very rapid results from this increased investment in TV impressions. We saw that going into the holiday or for the month, branded search went up 58% over the previous Cyber 5 weekend. For that 6-day period, for the month of November, it was up 50%. Black Friday became the second highest revenue day in the history of the company. And unfortunately, we fell short of our revenue goal. We did everything right. We grew our impressions, we grew our search, our revenue grew year over year, our market share grew year over year, but the revenue that we thought we were going to reach didn't materialize for us. So the first thing we did, we said, well, maybe we screwed up. Maybe the business wasn't as predictable as we thought. So we looked at those R-squared values, remembering that the impressions, the search R-squared value was 0.51% prior to the holiday. We actually saw that it was 0.58%, if I'm reading that correctly, this year. So the tentpole holiday actually solidified those R-squared values. And then the R-squared value for search to market share actually grew to 70%. So we knew that it wasn't the equation that we were relying on. There was something else that was wrong, and it must have been impressions, right? So we examined what happened with impressions, and we saw that going into after the 15th of November, our cost, our CPM for both linear and streaming TV rose about 46%, probably higher for the end of the month because the cost of those impressions had not gone up prior to that. And we think it's because, it was just a period when post-election more advertisers came into market, so demand grew, but also we rely mostly on remnant inventory. Up until a point, we rely on remnant inventory, and then inventory disappeared on us. So even if we wanted to pay the extra freight, we couldn't get the impressions that we needed, to the point where we had planned to put 1.2 billion impressions in the market in November. We only reached 950 million. So after the holiday, we said, well, we can't rely on that. We can't rely on the world to do exactly what we want. It seems like those R-squared values are good, but sometimes impressions are going to become more dear to us because there's bigger players in the market. We had not really invested significantly in YouTube, so we wondered, could YouTube serve as a proxy? We thought that YouTube probably reached a different audience than linear TV. So if it was going to be a proxy for anything, it would probably be a proxy for streaming. That was our hypothesis. So when we looked at the pros and cons, we felt that YouTube has advanced targeting capabilities. We don't target with TV, so that wasn't so important to us at the time, but it's a nice bonus. We felt that it would probably have a lower CPV. We felt that we could do performance-driven measurement. We've got a pretty sophisticated system for tracking Google Analytics and the Google ecosystem and what it does for a business. So we felt it would be easier to track than some of the linear and streaming TV even. We felt that these ads could be more engaging, although we were going to put the same creative in market as we were running for TV because we wanted to do a like and like test. If it's going to replace TV, can it replace TV with the same creative? There's flexible ad formats, 6 seconds, 15 seconds, 30s. We did mostly 30s for the test, but knowing that we could have that flexibility in the future was important to us. Lots of cross-device viewing. We find that with TV, people mostly are viewing on TV. They may come to us over their mobile phone, but that's because they have their mobile phone in their hand and they're not really interrupting the show that they're watching. So we saw good mobile traffic while our TV spots were running. But we felt, well, maybe because people are going to be watching YouTube on their mobile phone, it will make it easier for them to get to us. We thought we'd reach a younger audience with YouTube. And then we felt that eventually, although not for this test, we could use some of our first-party data to refine the targeting and the work that we were doing on YouTube. On the negative side, you don't always know where your creative is going to run. So there are some quality concerns in terms of programming. I can pick the NCAA Final Four game, can't really do that on YouTube to the extent that we wanted to unless it gets very expensive. People skip ads more on YouTube, and it's a lot easier for them to skip ads on YouTube. Limited reach on big screens. Like I said, we tended to get good results from the big screen. Traffic would come in from mobile, but people buy on a big screen for us. At least for now they do. There were some brand safety concerns. We felt that there could be fragmented attention because if you're watching content on a phone, you're getting alerts and reminders on that device. Whereas if you're watching us on TV and you get an alert on your phone, you're still getting the programming that you want to get. We felt it was less prestigious to be on YouTube than some of the programming we would get on TV. We had less control over the viewing experience. We could do our day parts, our networks, our programming placements on TV. You can't always do that with YouTube. We didn't always know what we were buying, and after the fact, we didn't really know what we bought, to be honest. So we don't have all the results in from this test, but I'll tell you what we know and what we're thinking of doing about it. So we spent almost $900,000 on YouTube in the month of February. That's 10x what we've ever spent on YouTube in any month in the past. We have learned over time that you can spend too little on a channel for it to generate measurable results. And we wanted to generate enough impression volume so that our MMM would be able to pick it up on the radar and tell us how well it did. We chose YouTube for reach. We said we don't want to do targeting. We want this to be a like test with TV. As it turns out, I think that was a mistake. We did nationwide, untargeted buy. We did remove kids content and some offensive content from the mix, and then we did a geographic holdout because we were still doing linear and streaming TV at this time. So we wanted markets where we weren't running YouTube so we could see the difference. Like I said, some of the data is yet to come in. What we saw was that on YouTube, the cost per visit was about $8, a little bit over $8. That's comparable to TV, so that was pretty encouraging. Unfortunately, we didn't see the same level of incrementality. Less than 1% incremental revenue came out of that. So while the revenue looked decent, it didn't look like, at this point anyway, that YouTube was replacing our streaming TV buy. We're still waiting for those results from the geographic holdout. It takes time to get that. Our next run of our media mix model will happen in about another 2 weeks, so we'll get that data in. But early indications are that it's not looking good for YouTube in their mix right now, but we think that we might have made some mistakes. So our hypothesis is that because we're so well saturated on TV and streaming, we're the number one mattress brand from impression share on streaming, it was probably hard for Google to show incremental gains when we're so well saturated on streaming TV. It did give us lower cost impressions and visits, but the people who visited were less likely to buy. We still don't know why that is yet. We're trying to figure that out. TV viewers might be more likely to persist in their sessions because they may be accessing our content over a mobile phone while the TV is running, and they might be willing to explore a little bit further because they're not interrupting their program. Whereas on YouTube, to explore us, they've got to interrupt the program, and they might be less likely to do that. The younger YouTube audience might not be able to afford our product yet. Our average order value is pretty steep. And then, YouTube is a really big arena. And an untargeted approach just may mean that we generate a lot of waste. I don't mind waste on TV. When we increase our impressions on TV, naturally we see our conversion rate go down. I don't care because the people that do convert and the revenue that we're getting is just moving in the direction I want it to. And maybe those people that don't buy today will buy in 3 years. So I don't think that it's wasted. So we're looking at YouTube as remarketing. So maybe for those people that we see over streaming that visit our site, other ways that they come to the site, maybe we can tell our fuller story using YouTube over video. So we're going to start to explore that and try to spend meaningfully there. We think we could build more purposeful targeting. So we're working with our Google team and we're saying, we can't throw money into a black box. We need to know the programming that we're sponsoring. So we need either big creators or big shows that are very popular. We're also looking at investing in podcasts that also have a video component with YouTube, because we've done really well with podcasting. So this might make our podcast investment even better. So we're going to test some popular podcasts that have that YouTube component as well. And that's really kind of where we are. You guys have any questions? Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, it's this was a 4-year journey, and every day was a debate internally about, are we doing the right thing? So I don't want to give the impression that it's any easier than it seems up here, but I love nothing more in life right now than talking about this. So anybody that wants to just share notes, I'd love to do that with you. Thank you. You're doing it again. Oh my God, thank you.
I mean, Riz, everybody, come on, Riz. Joe, thank you so much. It's very uncommon that we get such a detailed look at a test campaign where you were honest and open about what worked, what didn't, and how we're going to iterate moving forward. I truly appreciate that level of transparency. What questions do we have for Joe today?
Hey there, Talia from Xveris.
Hi, Talia.
Totally agree. I really commend you for the level of detail that you shared, which is extremely rare for a brand to do that, and really anyone to do that at these conferences. So I really appreciate that. So many questions, but I'll stick to the highlight. You did mention an MMM. I was curious if you have an MMM solution that gave you any indications of how much to invest in TV, and potentially that this YouTube investment should have increased in the way that you did. Were there any sort of indicating factors that helped you sell in that program using the MMM? Was it helpful? Was it not? Or is it more of like a look back?
Yeah, really good question. So when we run a quarterly MMM, and what it has shown us for maybe the past 9 or 10 quarters is that TV works. And the problem with our MMM, and probably MMMs in general, it can't tell you what you haven't done. It can evaluate what you've done, and you can give it a proposed budget for the next quarter, and it can say, okay, if this is your budget, and it's slightly more than you spent last quarter, then we would recommend you allocate it this way. And we don't follow the MMM recommendation blindly. We have a lot of conversations about it, but directionally it seems to say that linear is strong, streaming is strong. There's something in YouTube, like you're spending too little money for us to tell you that it's really good, but there's something there. There's something in Meta, especially in acquisition. There's something there, you're not spending enough, you should move into there. So sometimes the MMM will give us the courage to start investing in a different channel. Just another honest point, I was not a big believer in streaming TV. When you're paying a $280 CPM on linear, and then it's 14 to 16 or 18 on streaming, sometimes up to $30. I was so against that. If we're looking for excess share of voice, I want more impressions. But the media mix model was the one that said, you should, I know you think it's wrong, I know you think the CPMs are high, but there's something there. So we brought in a second media mix partner with a slightly different methodology just to do some triangulation. And it said, yeah, there's something here in streaming. So you saw that point on the chart where we invested more in streaming, and I was proven wrong in like a week. It was so effective for us. Those additional CPMs led to lower cost per visits and higher revenue per visit because we had increased the audience that we were attracting, but also people that are paying for streaming are likely more affluent than some of the people that you're reaching on linear. So we use it to give us the courage to move forward, and the team uses it to prove me wrong, because I can be pretty pig-headed sometimes. So.
I had, Joe, you got all sides of hands going up over here.
Good.
I know that I'm Molly. Sorry.
Hey,
Hi,
Raleigh.
Molly Leffler. I'm from Discover. I know that you mentioned that a lot of what you're focusing on was remnant inventory, and you listed it very clearly, especially with YouTube. A lot of it you don't sometimes know where you're running.
Right.
As much as I'd love to think financial services and mattresses have the same compliance and brand safety issues, we don't. But have you guys run into any brand safety concerns? Are you guys mitigating that in any way?
Not on YouTube so far. And again, it's a limited test, so we get to hear. Podcasting is where we tend to get a lot of, if you're on Joe Rogan, then the people that hate Joe Rogan are all over you. If you're on Malcolm Gladwell or NPR, the people that hate Malcolm Gladwell or NPR are all over you. So it's a little bit of a discussion internally to kind of quell the fears of leadership. Like, the people that are writing those quackish things to you, you need to ignore them. So far, we haven't seen that on YouTube. I suspect we could, though.
Hi, Kurt at Universal Technical Institute.
Kurt?
How long did it take you, and I'm sure you're still doing it, to prove that formula with your leadership or board that it works? We're always in that struggle of, I need to spend more in the upper funnel. I know it works. Our MMM says the same thing. Our MMM tells us there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for us within YouTube. But every time we invest, there's always a little bit of trepidation around lead gen. So, and then second part of that question is, what percentage do you think you're spending in upper funnel versus your traditional lead gen?
We saw, like I said, with podcasting and radio, almost immediate results where search volume went up. It took about 6 quarters before the board and the leadership team said, all right, you're not full of it. This seems to make sense. We started out, I think I had it on the slide there, in 2017, we were 4% in the upper funnel. Now we've moved up where we're in the low 30s between all those upper funnel channels I mentioned: radio, podcasting, linear streaming TV, and now YouTube. I think when we look at our media mix model, it doesn't feel like diminishing returns are very near where upper funnel spend is concerned. So I have an urgency to move up the funnel faster, but like I said, we're a traditional performance marketer, so we tend to test and learn our way, and it's slower than we want, but we don't make any big mistakes when we do it that way. Okay.
Last question over here.
Okay.
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
My name is Jenny Linquist. I am the Senior Director of Full Funnel Marketing at Kellanova. I actually have 2 questions, but I'm not going to be selfish, so I'm going to let you pick the topic.
Okay.
MMM or creative?
Creative.
Got my notes. Okay. So thinking back to when you stepped into TV, I think I saw in 2022.
Yep.
Yeah. It to me seemed like a yes and approach. You're building on top. So I'm curious what type of creative you credit to success.
Yep.
Did you keep it functional? Did you start to build the brand through emotional connectivity? Or do you really just kind of credit your channel strategy?
Oh, what a great question. Right now, when you look at those R-squared values, I would say that if our creative were better, they would improve. If our creative were worse, they would get less valid for us. There's a lot of disagreement in Saatva right now about what makes good creative. So I grew up as a creative director, so of course I believe in emotional storytelling. I don't think humor works as well in our category, but I think that if you can be emotional about how the benefits of sleep, you can win. I would say that when we measure the effectiveness, we've got another partner that looks within channels for us to look at the veracity of different tactics. And there's definitely some creative that performs better than other creative, but it's not monumentally better such that I can say we got to do more of this, right? So we're right now, a big discussion internally is, I think there's a group that believes that if we were more emotional, if we did better storytelling, if we told a consistent story over multiple years, we could be much more powerful than we are. And I think we would see the relationship between our share of voice and our share of search and our market share would grow dramatically. For now, I would say that we're, from a creative standpoint, we're probably at a 6 where I wish if we were at 8 or a 9. I really think we could go from a $600 million brand to $1 billion brand in 2 years. I don't think there's anybody in our industry right now that's doing advertising worth watching. I think we are, but I think it could be a lot better. I hope that answered your. I know that there's going to be people from my company watching this, and not everybody agrees with me, so I'm trying to hedge my bets and not get fired here. So.
Joe, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We appreciate you kicking us off this
All right.
morning.